Hi and welcome to my channel. In this video I will show you how to activate the web server of a virtual Siemens S7-1500 PLC and also how to make an HMI to control PLC variables from any web browser. For this example we will need the following tools. First of all, we're gonna need TIA Portal. In this case I have the version 15.1. Then we're gonna need PLC CM Advanced. In this case I have the version 3.0. And then we're gonna need brackets, which is a web page editor. I want to clarify that in a real case we will simply have to connect the PLC previously configured and programmed with TIA Portal, which in this case will be the web server, to a PC or a laptop, where we will view or modify the PLC variables through an HMI using any web browser. We could also use a router to access the user page and modify or view the PLC variables wirelessly through another device. In this case, I don't have a physical PLC, but we can activate the web server of a virtual PLC using PLC SIM Advanced. The process of activating the web server of a virtual PLC is very similar to activating the web server of a physical PLC, only that a few more steps are added to the process of activating the web server of a virtual PLC. In this picture, we can see that we are going to load our program made in TIA Portal to our virtual PLC instance. That instance will be connected to the virtual Ethernet port that comes with the installation of PLC SIM Advanced. That port obviously has to be in the same network of our PLC. And thanks to this port we can access a previously developed HMI where we can view or control our PLC variables from any browser. The option of having a web server integrated into a PLC is a great advantage since we could access our server through any web browser, and in this way our variables can be displayed and controlled by any device within the network and without any additional software. It should be clarified that this option is not a replacement for HMI devices, because HMI devices are more robust devices and their integration turns out to be a little easier. Now, if we want to display our data in a decent and organized way using the web server, we will need knowledge of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to develop our user page. If we want to implement a web server, we will have to consider the load memory of the PLC and also how complete we want the user page to be, since the more aesthetic and presentable the user page is, the more memory we will occupy in the PLC. Siemens has realized about the good potential that web servers have in PLCs and decided to include a built-in function called View of Things in their new version of TIA Portal 17 that came out last May of 2021, but is only available for S7-1500 PLC with a firmware version of 2.9 up. In this case, I cannot use this function because I don't have the version 17 of TIA Portal. Therefore, we will make the user page with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to control the PLC variables. To fully understand this topic, I have decided to divide this video as follows. First, we're gonna make a basic example, which is gonna be distributed in 4 parts. The first part is gonna be about the configuration and programming of the PLC in TIA Portal. The second part is gonna be about the making of the user page. The third part is gonna be about the PLC SIM Advanced configuration. And the last part is gonna be about loading the program to the PLC and simulating the program. Then I'm gonna show you a simple example, which is basically an improved version of the basic example. And lastly, I'm gonna show you an advanced example to have an idea of the potential of this topic. In part 1, the first thing that I'm gonna do is explain you what this basic example consists of to understand how all this integration can be done. This example will consist of the following. By pressing the Start button from the user page, we will turn on an output of our PLC. and then by pressing the stop button from the user page, that output will be turned off. And if we want to turn that output back on, we will have to press the start button again. To do this, we have to open TIA Portal and create a new project. In this case, I called it Simple Exercise. Then we open the project view and select a new device. In this case, we will choose a PLC S7 15131PN and make sure that it has a firmware version of 2.0 up. When the PLC is added to the project, the first thing that we will do is assign an IP address to the PLC. In this case, it will be 192.168.1.4. Now, just because we have a virtual PLC, we have to go to the Created Project, then we right-click and select the Properties option. Then we go to the Protection section and enable this option that says Support Simulation during block compilation. By enabling this option, we could now simulate our program with PLC Sim Advanced. Having all of this ready, we have to go to the device configuration, then go to Properties and enable the Web Server option. Then we have to deactivate this option right here since it is not necessary in our case. Then we will create a data block where the PLC variables that will be controlled from the user page will be stored. For that, we have to click on the option to add a new block, select data block and name it DB. Then we go to the created block and write our variables. In this case, they will be named start and motor. Now we will proceed to program the PLC. For that, we go to Program Blocks and select the main. And then we have to create our program. As we can see, this basic program consists of the following. When the normally open contact is activated, the motor output turns on. And when the contact is deactivated, the motor output turns off. In part 2, we will create the user page. And as I said at the beginning, this example will be the simplest. Later in the video, I will show you a more complex one. Now, we have to go to the brackets editor and we will see how I develop the user page. This is the HTML and JavaScript programming of the user page. A very important aspect to highlight is that when we do the programming of our user page, we must take into account the AWP commands. These commands must be placed in the programming of the user page, since they are necessary for the exchange of data between the PLC and the user page. Through these commands, we are establishing which variables will be read or written from the user page. Basically, we will establish which variables will only be displayed from our user page and which variables will be modified from our user page. In this case, as you can see at the top of the programming, there are two AWP command lines, where I am basically saying that the variable name start located in the data block called DB will be a variable that can be modified from the HMI or user page, whatever you want to call it. And the variable name motor located in the data block named DB, it will be just a display variable. We can see that the HMI contains two buttons. One of them is called start and the other one is called stop. We see that when we press the button start, a logical 1 is sent to our variable in the PLC called start, located in the data block called DB. And when we press the button stop, a logical 0 is sent to the variable in the PLC called start, located in the data block called DB. Also down here we can see a rectangle, which in this case will change color depending on the state of our output called motor. Above we can see a code in JavaScript where there is a function that receives a variable as a single parameter. That parameter will be the motor variable, and we're going to evaluate the value of this variable. If the motor variable is equal to 1, the color of the rectangle will change to green, and if the motor variable is equal to 0, the color of the rectangle will change to red. Now we already have explained how this program was developed, so we will load the user page to the PLC. To do this, we go to the device configuration and we go to properties, then we select the web server option and we arrive at this area where we first have to choose the folder where the user page is located. Then we select the HTML file of the user page and then we click on generate blocks. We have to wait for the operation to finish and we can see that blocks were generated with the data of the files inside of the user page folder. Lastly, we are going to add a block to the PLC programming. To do this, we go to the main and add the www block. This block processes requests from the browser and synchronizes the data on the user page. Then in the control DB parameter, we will select the DB333 block that was generated previously. This block is basically used together with the ww function to control the exchange of data. For the parameter readbot, we will create a variable called error. Having all of this, we will proceed to part 3, where we are going to configure the PLC Sim Advanced. To do this, we open the PLC Sim Advanced, and the first thing that we will do is change to PLC Sim Virtual Ethernet port. Then we have to create an instance. In this case, I called it examples. And the IP address will be the IP address of our previously configured PLC. In this case is 192.168.1.4. Then the subnet mask is 255.255.255.0, and then we press start. Note that we are using the virtual Ethernet port, and to be able to use the web server with a virtual PLC and to obtain a successful connection, we must place the virtual Ethernet port in the same network as the PLC. In this case, I set an IP address of 192.168.1.3. We have already configured the PLC Sim Advanced, so now we are going to load the entire program to the PLC. When this window pops up, we have to change the interface and select the option that says Siemens Virtual Ethernet Adapter. Then we have to click on Start Search and we have to wait until the PLC gets recognized, and lastly we select the PLC and load the program. Now we're going to simulate this program, and the first thing that we're going to do is open a tab in Chrome and write the IP address of the PLC, and the web server will appear. Then we click on Enter and we go to User Pages and select our user page called Examples. And as we can see, this is our HMI built in HTML and a bit of JavaScript. Now we're gonna see if this works. So we will put our program in TIA Portal in online mode to view the status of the variables in real time. If we press the Start button, the state of the normally open contact changes, the output call motor turns on, and the rectangle changes color. Now if we press the Stop button, the output turns off and we will need to refresh the user page manually to see the changes in the HMI. As you can see, our user page works correctly and connects successfully to the PLC. But as you can also see, this user page is not effective, and in a real-life case it will not be the most appropriate thing to implement it, for the following reasons. First of all, clearly it's not an attractive HMI. Second of all, the data is not updated automatically. It must be done manually by refreshing the page. And lastly, the HMI does not reflect what is in the field. To solve this, I have developed this simple example, which is basically an improved version of the basic example. Well, first I will start by explaining the changes that were made. To solve this, I have developed this simple example, which is basically an improved version of the basic example. Well, first I will start by explaining the changes that were made. The first change that was made was in the programming of the PLC. We now see the typical starting of a motor that when we press the start button, we activate the memory 0.1, and when we press the stop button, we deactivate the memory 0.1. And in the next segment, we activate or deactivate the variable motor. The second change that was made was in the programming of the user page, where lines of CSS and JavaScript were added. Specifically, I worked with Ajax using jQuery for the automatic updates of elements of the web page. In addition, the SVG drawing of the motor was also added to the HMI. Also, it should be noted that the SVG drawing was made in Inkscape and integrated into the programming. Now I'm going to simulate the program, and as we can see, if we press the start button, the memory 0.1 turns on and the color of the HMI motor changes to green without refreshing the page manually. Then if we press the stop button, we see how the memory 0.1 turns off and the color of our HMI motor changes to white without refreshing the page manually. Now in this HMI, only some of the defects that the basic example presented were improved. How could we further improve this user page? Well, by making an HMI more attractive, by actually reflecting what's in the field, and by making our website responsive. And what does that mean? Well, this means that we can make our user page adapt to the size of any device. It can be a laptop, tablet, or phone. For this, I have made this last example where we have a much more pleasant interface and we perfectly reflect what is in the field. There were also changes in the programming of the HMI. First of all, I completely changed the SVG drawing and I created a new one in Inkscape and implemented it in the programming. In addition, I also have made changes to the PLC program, and as we can see, I implemented a typical direct starter of a motor, and I also programmed the PLC so that the motor has a cycle of 8 seconds, where in 4 seconds the motor will be on, and in 4 seconds the motor will be off, and after the cycle is completed, the cycle will be repeated. Now we have to add the new user page to the PLC, and then we have to load the whole program to the PLC. The HMI consists of a title of a company. In this case, I put the name of my YouTube channel, RC Automatización, then the name of the process and the drawing of the process itself. We basically have a pumping system, and here we can see the motor data such as voltage and current consumed, as well as the pump data such as the speed and the flow. In addition, you can see the tank level and supply pressure. Now let's simulate to verify that the HMI works. By pressing the start button, we will start the engine cycle. We could also change the values we see on display, and as we can see, all variables have a default value of 0. To modify these values, we're gonna create a wash table in TIA Portal. I already have one here, and now if we force the values of these variables, they should be automatically modified without refreshing the page manually. And as we can see, we accomplished the goal because the user page updates the values of the variables every second without refreshing the page manually. I'm gonna do it again so you can see the change again. With this, we can confirm that the HMI takes the variables from the PLC in a successful way. And by pressing the stop button, we're gonna stop the motorcycle. Finally, we can confirm that our website is responsive. If we press F12 and select this icon right here, we can see how our HMI will look on different devices. For example, Surface Duo, Pixel 2, iPad Pro, iPhone X. And as we can see, the HMI adapts perfectly to those devices. So thank you so much for watching my channel. If you want to see more videos about the development of user pages to control variables of a Siemens PLC, let me know in the comments. Remember to share this video, like and subscribe, and until next time.